You've heard it in every World War II movie. Saving Private Ryan, Band of Brothers, Call of Duty. That distinctive metallic ping when an M1 Garand rifle ejects its empty clip. And you've probably heard the story that goes with it. How German and Japanese soldiers would listen for that sound, knowing the American GI was defenseless, then rush his position during the reload. It's become one of those facts that everyone knows. The kind of tactical detail that makes you sound smart at parties. There's just one problem. It never happened. Not once. Not in Normandy, not in the Pacific, not in the Italian campaign. Zero credible evidence. No tactical manuals mention it. No after-action reports document it. Veterans overwhelmingly call it nonsense. So why do we believe it? And more importantly, what's the real story behind that iconic ping sound? The answer involves acoustic physics, battlefield chaos, and one of the most misunderstood design features in military history. A feature that actually saved lives, despite what the internet will tell you. Welcome to World War II Objects, where every object tells a story. Picture this, June 6th, 1944. Omaha Beach. Artillery shells explode at 140 decibels, loud enough to cause permanent hearing damage. Machine gun fire cracks at 160 decibels. Men scream. Metal tears. The air itself seems to scream. And somewhere in that chaos, an M1 Garand ejects an empty clip with a metallic ping measuring roughly 90 to 95 decibels. That's the sound level of a lawnmower, in a symphony of thunder. The M1 Garand, adopted on January 9th, 1936, revolutionized infantry combat. It fired semi-automatically, 8 rounds as fast as you could pull the trigger. Compare that to bolt-action rifles requiring manual cycling after every shot. American soldiers could put lead downrange in 2 to 3 seconds, while their enemies managed 1 round every 3 to 4 seconds. The trade-off? An en-bloc clip system. You loaded all 8 rounds at once in a steel clip weighing about 1.76 ounces. When you fired the last round, a spring-loaded follower launched at that empty clip upward and to the right, about 2 to 3 feet, creating that distinctive sound at a frequency between 2,000 and 4,000 Hz. Engineers called it positive indication of empty status. Soldiers called it the ping. By 1945, 5.4 million M1 Garands had been manufactured. Millions of soldiers heard that ping thousands of times. But here's what soldiers didn't know, and what Hollywood would later completely misunderstand. Here's where the myth collapses under basic physics. Sound doesn't travel through chaos on demand. It follows rules. When battlefield noise averages 140 to 180 decibels, that's jet engine territory. A 90 decibel ping becomes 50 to 90 decibels quieter than the ambient roar. Think of it like trying to hear someone whisper in a rock concert. Now imagine that rock concert wants to kill you. Acoustic analysis and veteran testimony align on this. The ping was barely audible beyond 10 to 15 feet in actual combat conditions. Sergeant William Ryan of the 1st Infantry Division, who landed at Normandy, put it bluntly in oral histories at the National WW2 Museum. That ping meant you were empty and vulnerable. Every GI knew to drop flat and reload immediately. I never once heard of a Kraut timing his attack to it. That's Hollywood nonsense. Now you might be thinking, maybe in quieter moments, patrols, night operations, sure. But consider what that requires. An enemy soldier needs to be close enough to hear a 90 decibel sound over their own movement, breathing, and equipment noise. They need to distinguish it from dozens of other metallic sounds on a battlefield. Canteens clanking, rifle slings rattling, grenades being prepared. They need to identify which direction it came from. They need to process that information and coordinate an attack. All before that American soldier, who's been trained extensively on speed loading, slams in a fresh clip. We're talking 2 to 3 seconds of vulnerability. Maybe. And here's the thing that kills the myth completely. If this were actually a tactical vulnerability, it would appear somewhere in the historical record. German tactical manuals, Japanese training documents, post-battle intelligence reports, anything. Historians have searched. They found nothing. But the on-bloc clip did create one real problem. Just not the one you've heard about. What the M1 Garand couldn't do was top off. You couldn't add a few rounds to a partially loaded clip like a modern detachable magazine. You fired all 8, or, if absolutely necessary, you pulled the operating rod to the rear, pressed the clip latch, and manually yanked out the partial clip while holding the bolt open. Try doing that while someone's shooting at you. This wasn't an oversight. It was a calculated trade-off. In 1936, engineers at Springfield Armory tested over 50 competing designs. Detachable box magazines existed. They were rejected for manufacturing complexity and logistical concerns. The en-bloc system was simpler, cheaper, more reliable in mud and ice and sand. Army Ordnance evaluations from 1936, preserved in National Archives Record Group 156, show they considered the 8-round capacity acceptable for semi-automatic fire superiority. The inability to top off was acknowledged, not considered critical. General Patton would later call the M1 Garand the greatest battle implement ever devised. He wasn't worried about the ping, neither were the soldiers who carried them. Private Harold Fennemer of the 82nd Airborne wrote home in 1944, "The rifle makes a distinctive ping when you fire the last shot. It's actually kind of satisfying when you're at the range, but in combat you barely notice it over all the other noise. Barely notice it, because physics doesn't care about Hollywood drama." So where did this story come from? The myth appears to be almost entirely post-war. It doesn't show up in 1940s documentation. It gains traction sometime in the late 20th century, probably amplified by internet forums, video games, and eventually big-budget films that made the ping deafening for dramatic effect. It persists because it sounds plausible. It's the kind of logical-sounding tactical scenario that makes sense if you've never stood on an actual battlefield. It gives the enemy credit for cleverness. It creates tension. It's a good story, but it's not history. The M1 Garand stayed in primary service until 1957. Some versions continued use into the 1960s. Not because the Army ignored a fatal flaw, because there wasn't one. Modern firearms still use similar principles. Witness how AR-15 bolt-catch releases create audible sounds during reloads, yet no modern tactical doctrine warns about enemy soldiers listening for it. Because in actual combat, you can't hear it. You're too busy not dying. So the next time you watch a World War II film and hear that ping amplified to dramatic perfection, remember what you now know. You'll know it's not a design flaw that endangered soldiers. It's evidence of engineering trade-offs that prioritized reliability over theoretical perfection. It's a sound that soldiers trusted, not feared. It's proof that good design accepts limitations when the alternative is worse. Thank you for watching WW2 Objects. If you have suggestions for other WW2 items we should cover, from field equipment to weapons to the everyday gear soldiers actually used, leave them in the comments below and we'll give you a shout out. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss a story from the battlefield.